The the concept of a party, it may have been useful at some point when a candidate going to Montpelier, being sent into the Senate or the House, spent pretty much the entire legislative season there because it was actually difficult to travel,
right,
and there was no communication with one's constituents possible.
Right.
So you had to trust this guy for a long period of time to act in your best interests.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the politician himself may be an outmoded concept,
right,
given the ability with technology, as you say, to
mm-hmm.
participate directly. But I could tell you, Terry, that any party in Vermont today would find numerous things that they might agree with me about and then toss me out on my ear because of one sticking point.
Right.
And I can't say that I'm with Republicans or Democrats or left and right because I do believe in the social contract, but I am fiscally conservative, but I don't believe that we have to trade
right.
the social contract for being responsible.
Yeah, I think
fiscally.
that's one of the ultimate disconnects. Really, is that somehow the sound idea of fiscal responsibility and social responsibility have been permanently divided in these two parties.
Yep.
To me, a fiscally responsible approach to government would, by default, also be socially responsible. Because if you're not socially responsible, ultimately you're going to have huge costs that won't be fiscally sustainable, and that this all actually goes together, but it's been permanently divided so that if you want it, you have to pick one or the other. And both of those, one or the others, are not sustainable approaches because they ignore half of the equation.
That's part of the problem that the Democratic Party had in the 70s. I think Jimmy Carter was one of the best presidents that we ever had, but he did have a problem that he allowed inflation to get out of hand. And that's what really brought Reagan in 1980 and caused the big turnaround where now we don't have the social benefits.
Right.
I would have liked to have seen social benefit with care that the budget was always balanced.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's indeed possible, Terry. But
I think so. Yes.
We have to get rid of the social the social stigma. We have to stop being played off against one another as
Right.
left or right.
Right.
That's been an incredible divisive technique of which Karl Rove would be proud.
Yeah, I mean,
Divide and conquer.
That's the endless tennis match that you can watch on any news network if you want to, that doesn't go anywhere. And you know, I think that's one of the things that Vermont brings to this table is we've already got a tradition of independent thinking, people who vote on people or issues, not so much on party. We've got several high-profile independent people in our political history, including Bernie and Jim Jeffords, who made some waves. We have examples of that, and I think a lot of people, that resonates with a lot of people. As things get worse economically and more inflamed in terms of rhetoric that you'll see on the major media, it's kind of pushing people against that. It's pushing people back to, oh, you're not a Sarah Palin person, so you have to support the Democrats, or you see the explosion of social debt, and so you have to support Sarah Palin. It pushes people in that divisive paradigm that just, I think Vermont, if any place in this country can get beyond that, just in our heads collectively, we're already there. We just have to get people to wake up and come out and vote. And there's a huge percentage. I mean, I think our whole campaign is actually mobilizing people who haven't voted maybe ever, or who haven't voted lately because they've become so disenchanted with what they've seen as it's a waste of time to vote for a Democrat or a Republican.
That's a vote against the entire system itself.
Yeah.
I have personal experience with what you were talking about, Robert. I'm on the state committee of the Progressive Party, and so we have to have nominating petitions, 100 signatures in order to be on the ballot for the Senate. So at one of the party meetings, I was getting my petition signed, and most of the people did sign it. But when I asked the party leader who was there to sign it, she said, no, those people that you were running with, they're all right-wing conservatives. And I must admit, you know, it gave me pause to think. But I'm a socialist, and I supported Bernie Sanders, and I rely upon the fact that Bernie won with a resounding majority here in Vermont. And I think that as an independent state, Vermont will stick with that philosophy. They're not going to overnight, because they're independent, change and become libertarians. But the right and left dichotomy is really divides us unnecessarily, because we share a lot of common views. That, for instance, we're all against the war. None of us want to continue fighting in Afghanistan, do we, or in Iraq? And we could take all that money, $1.5 billion, is it? And
every year.
And we can balance the budget here in Vermont, and at the same time give people health care.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the argument that we can't afford these social systems is ridiculous. To me, the question is, do they really? It's not that. The question is really, do they work? You know, I mean, I grew up in poverty, and I have, you know, deep experience in being a participant in that system, and I've seen it go both ways. You know, I've seen people use social safety nets as what they're intended for, or stated to be, as a temporary. You lost your job, you had health care issues, you need a little help. But there's also this other complete dependence factor going on with a huge portion of our culture, where they've got an entitlement in their head, and they're just going to keep going back every month. And I've seen that too. And you know, so I think that the question is, what produces the most productive value as a community? And that's why I would call myself a socialist at the community level, but not at the state level. I think that's too big. I think the towns need to take care of their own. And if I'm having a problem financially from some reason, if I can't go to my local select board subcommittee on social safety net, say, look, I'm having a problem, can you help me out for a few months? And look them in the eye and tell them my situation and have them say yes, then I don't deserve the help. You know, if I have to go to some generic state agency that won't really know me or be able to evaluate if I'm productive or not, or if I'm gaming the system or not, that becomes too impersonal, I think. And I think that maybe there's a way to do that middle way in between, but the problem that comes from it is people they do need to accept personal responsibility.
You see, I disagree with that, because you know, once you get onto the local level, you get these cliques, and people will be excluded.
Sure,
not because
and that's why it's moved to where it went. And sure, that's a total relevant argument. But I think that there's some new experiments that we could attempt to make with that. You know, I don't. You know, healthcare is the trickiest one for me, because yes, single payer would reduce a huge bureaucratic cost and all this profit mongering on the insurance industry. But when you're getting a service from someone, doctor, mechanic, you know, whoever, if you're not asking them how much is it and is that a good value, then you're not keeping costs down. You know, so a socialized medical system that doesn't have people insist on getting the best value is going to have another whole waste stream in it from bloated costs. So
but the individual person who is sick, he's not really in a position to negotiate costs while he's dying.
Well, we don't even ask.
It's up to the state to ask, I think. A single-payer state-run system like in Canada. I lived in Canada for...
Sure. No, I think that's possible. I don't think that's... I mean, there's plenty of examples of it working. But the Swiss model is not that. There's an interesting Swiss healthcare model where it's just diversified, free market system, and there is a safety net for those who can't afford it, but it's managed by the local community. It's funded by the local community. So it's a hybrid of what we're talking about, which I think is interesting.